Well, I bet you weren't planning on seeing my face today, but here we are. And here is spring, and that means spring training. Baseball is back. We've all been waiting for it. It has been a brutal winter. Trust me, I know all about that. I got 7 inches of snow right out my window. It's about the only thing that's 7 inches. But nonetheless, I'm here today because of one man and one man only, and it is this guy right here, Frankie Montas. The first injury of spring is upon us. It's like birds chirping. As soon as you hear birds chirping, you know spring is here. As soon as you get that first injury for your squad, you know pitchers and catchers have reported. So, Frankie Montas, the report coming out of camp for the Mets already is that he will be out for several months, according to the team. A high grade lat strain that will sideline the veteran right-hander for an extended period of time. Carlos Mendoza went on to say 6 to 8 weeks of no throwing, and that's just of no throwing. I wasn't super excited about this Montas signing. I won't lie. I thought back end of the rotation kind of guy, and that's probably exactly what he was going to be, especially when you look at his numbers from last year. With Cincinnati over 19 starts, a 5.01 ERA, before going over to Milwaukee and 11 starts, a 4.55 ERA. So a slight improvement. And if you want to get into those nerdy analytical numbers, I'm here for that too. No problem. ERA plus while in Cincinnati, 88. In Milwaukee, slight tick up to ERA plus of 92. So not exactly Lefty Grove or Cy Young, but a viable arm that was going to pitch in this Mets rotation that on paper definitely doesn't look like the most talented and definitely has some question marks already. So today we need to figure out how are the Mets going to replace Frankie Montas in the meantime. Before we do that, though, it is February 18th, and our countdown to opening day is now 37, as in the Mets' original manager, Casey Stengel. Casey Stengel's playing career lasted 13 seasons beginning in 1912, played for Boston and a handful of other teams, but of course was best known for managing the New York Yankees to 7 World Series. In 1962, though, he adopted the Baby Mets, as he dubbed them. Stengel would go on to manage the Mets from 62 to 1965, compiling a 175 win to 404 loss record. But you got to love Casey for embracing the Mets the way that he did, making them the lovable losers that they ended up becoming, and always having a great quote. Two of my favorites from Casey. 1964, he says about President Lyndon B. Johnson, he wanted to see poverty, so he came to see my team. And one of my other favorites, we're a much improved club. Now we lose in extra innings. So hats off to Casey Stengel, the number 37, hanging in the rafters at Citi Field as it properly should. And that is the countdown to opening day. Now, let's start with the internal options the Mets have to replace Montas in the rotation. So the first name the Mets can replace Montas with in the rotation is their top pitching prospect, and that is Brandon Sproat. Sproat, a 2023 second-round draft pick by New York. In fact, the Mets actually tried to draft him the year prior. He opted to return to Florida to complete college, but the Mets got their guy, and he did not disappoint in his first full year of pro ball. He started the year in high A Brooklyn, where he absolutely dominated. Over 6 starts, a 107 ERA. He jumped up to double A Binghamton and was equally as good in 11 starts, a 2.45 ERA, and then even made it all the way to triple A Syracuse. Not as great of numbers there, though. 7 starts, a 7.53 ERA. He actually said in an interview recently that he started getting away from himself, was maybe trying to get too cute and not just pitching to his true self. So at least he was a little reflective on that. So the pros on Sproat, he has a great strikeout to walk ratio, that electric fastball, a 4-pitch mix, including a changeup that's got a nice differential from that heater, and then a slider and a curveball. It sounds like the slider is going to be his wipeout pitch, but he could still use some more seasoning. And here's one of the reasons why he's prone to giving up the long ball. 14 home runs last year in just 24 starts. That's something that he's going to need to work on, and that most young pitchers are going to need to work on. Don't be surprised if we see Sproat pitching at the big league level for the Mets this year, but don't expect him to break camp with the team either. So for those reasons, he's not going to be the man to replace Frankie Montas, at least not right away. And then we have our old friend Tyler McGill. You remember 2022 McGill stepping up and starting opening day while Jacob deGrom was on the mend. He even started getting comparisons to Jake. He got the nickname Big Drip. And then he even pitched in that combined no-hitter against the Phillies that year as well. But it seems like ever since then, it's mostly been all downhill from there for Tyler, either because of injury or just not really performing at the big league level. And that was kind of the case, at least through his first 9 starts last year. From March 31st through July 31st, he had a 5.17 ERA during that time, and it was looking more and more like McGill's probably not ever going to be much instead of just a mop-up duty kind of guy. But something switched after that, because his next start on August 31st through September, McGill was absolutely dominant. In 6 starts over that time, McGill recorded a 2.32 ERA over 31 innings. He was integral to the Mets getting to the playoffs this year, and they could not have done it without him. Really came on strong and late for this team. So I'm kind of torn on Tyler McGill. I don't know if we can trust that second half from last year. What we've seen over the large majority of his career is that he's oft injured and usually not super effective against MLB lineups. Now, as a 5th starter, could he be a guy that for 2 months gets the Mets going along and can eat some innings? I don't see why not. And quite frankly, if it's not going to be Brandon Sproat, he might be the best of the internal options, which brings me to number 2. And so the next potential option to replace Montas in the rotation is Paul Blackburn. The Mets acquired Blackburn from Oakland last year at the trade deadline, and he only ended up making 5 starts for the team before having a pretty wacky injury, a spinal fluid leakage. That was after a comebacker that he took out in San Diego, and that shelved him for the rest of the season and the playoffs. In his first 9 starts of the year with Oakland, he had a 4.41 ERA and an ERA plus of 90. Then he came over to the Mets, and in 5 starts, a 5.18 ERA and an ERA plus of 77. Not exactly eye-popping numbers, let's be honest. He gets the job done as your 5th rotation kind of guy, and he's kind of in the same vein as a Tyler McGill. They're different pitchers, but you could see where, hey, if one of them could just get hot for a month or 2 and eat some innings for us, they're definitely capable of doing that. Look, these aren't going to be sexy names, and unfortunately, that's exactly Paul Blackburn. He was an all-star in 2022, but for the most of his career, it's really not been all that impressive. I would expect him to probably be in the leading category as the 5th starter for this team, because I think he has less experience pitching out of the bullpen, whereas Tyler McGill has pitched in relief. He even did it in the postseason, though results may vary, or maybe they don't, because McGill wasn't so effective out of the pen in his 2 relief appearances during October last year. But in my opinion, Paul Blackburn's probably slated in as the number 5 guy right now, unless he proves otherwise or someone else proves better come spring training. So the next option after Sproat, McGill, or Blackburn is Griffin Canning. Canning came over to the Mets this offseason after spending the entirety of his career so far with the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim and Orange County, whatever they're called nowadays. Anyway, Canning actually was a top-rated prospect many years ago, but it just has not worked out for the young man. Last year, though, one of the nice things that he did do for the Angels was pitch, and pitch a lot. He made 32 starts. Don't look at any of the other numbers because they're not pretty. A 5.19 ERA over that time, and what's even scarier, his FIP was 5.26, so he may have actually pitched even worse, not helped out by some good defense behind him. Here's the pros on Canning. He made 30 starts last year. He made 24 in 2023. And when we're talking about a 5th spot in a rotation, you're looking for a guy to take the ball every 5th day. He's a former top prospect, so there's some upside there. He's 28 years old, which nowadays is a dinosaur for pitchers, but he's young enough that he could still figure it out. What scares me, though, that FIP. 5.26 last year, higher than his ERA. He may be pitching even worse than his numbers actually indicate. And not only is he not able to perform to the level that they anticipated out in Anaheim, but now coming to New York, it's going to be a bigger stage and maybe even harder for him to finally put it all together. So I want to know, of these options, who do you guys think is the best to replace Frankie Montas as the 5th starter in the Mets rotation? Is it one of these guys, or is it somebody that I didn't even think of for this video? Be sure to leave a comment below, and let's go Mets.